check out our streaming schedule for this week. We've got tons of content in terms of the NFL and college football, as we're going live just about every single day this week. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment where we go live. And now, on with our feature presentation. The extra point, the point after touchdown, the point after attempt, the try after the touchdown, whatever you want to call it, I think it's fair to say that the play is nearly automatic, as you rarely, if ever, see kickers miss on extra points. Especially when the extra point was at the 2-yard line and not at the 15-yard line, it was not uncommon whatsoever to see kickers go an entire season without missing from that spot. Having said that, just because something was nearly automatic doesn't mean it was entirely automatic, as you did see kickers miss every now and then, as you can tell from these clips. During the 1991 season, there were 941 extra points attempted in the regular season. Of those 941 kicks, a whopping 919 of them found the middle of the uprights and went in, meaning that 97.7% of the time, the point after would result in a team walking away from a touchdown with 7 points. Remember that there was no 2-point conversion back then, so you had to kick the extra point for scoring. However, while there were 919 makes, this also meant that there were 22 misses, or 2.3% of kicks. Not a high number in the grand scheme of things, but more than once per week on average, you would see a kicker not split the uprights and would see the kick either get blocked or would get pushed to the side. And those missed extra points had the potential to be extremely costly and extremely huge in the grand scheme of things. One missed extra point could make all the difference. And speaking of one thing being able to make a huge difference, you can make a difference right now as one person by hitting that like button down below, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. We post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, with stories like this one that you might have never heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is the place for you. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and hit 70,000 subscribers. So what if I said that one of these 22 missed extra points, and a big one at that considering the stakes of the game and considering how the game was going, didn't even get shown live on television? What if I said that NBC, as in the network broadcasting the game in question, just forgot to show the point after, and they left everyone in the dark as to what actually happened, leading people to believe that the score was one thing when, in actuality, it was something entirely different? Well, prepare yourself for a bizarre broadcasting controversy today, as we go back nearly a quarter century to 1991, when NBC, during this game right here, as in a battle between the San Diego Chargers and the Miami Dolphins, just forgot to show the extra point, and the decision turned out to be incredibly costly. Because this is the story behind the time that NBC failed to do its job of broadcasting a game. Before I talk about the actual broadcasting controversy in question, and what exactly NBC got wrong, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, because this was an absolutely big one, and how this game was going. It's December 15th, 1991. It's week 16 of the NFL season, and as we're in the penultimate week of the year, we've got an AFC battle on our hands in San Diego between the Miami Dolphins and the San Diego Chargers. Now, for the Chargers, this game means nothing. They're one of the worst teams in football, sitting at 3-11 with one of the worst records in football, and with head coach Dan Henning, nothing more than a dead man walking at this point. But for the Miami Dolphins, oh man, this game meant the world for them. As things stood, the Dolphins were 8-6, sitting 1.5 games up on the New York Jets at 7-8 for the final wildcard spot in the conference, following New York's loss earlier in the day to New England. If the Dolphins lost this game, then they'd have a winner-take-all and a de facto playoff game against the Jets in Week 17, where the winner goes to the postseason as the number 6 seed and is one of the worst playoff teams of all time, and the loser misses the playoffs entirely. However, if the Dolphins won this game, then they'd clinch a playoff spot and would make it back for the second straight season. So to say that this game was a must-win would be putting it extremely lightly, as the last thing you wanted to do was to be fighting for your playoff lives in Week 17. And so far, this game was pretty even, with the score tied at 10 apiece at the half, with Miami just 30 minutes away from making the playoffs. Midway through the third quarter, it seemed as though the Dolphins would get their breakthrough. After a few runs, Dan Marino finds Mark Duper on a comeback route just outside the red zone. What should have been a gain of about 3 turns into a huge chunk play, picking up the first down at the 9-yard line and setting Miami up in a goal-to-go situation. One play later, Marino capitalizes and throws a 9-yard touchdown pass to fullback Tony Page, who runs into the end zone to give Miami the 16-10 lead on the road. No one's on Page on this out route, and to say that Page takes full advantage of this defensive breakdown and lapse would be putting it lightly. San Diego had a defense that ranked in the bottom quarter of the league in most overall and passing categories, and the Hall of Fame quarterback exploited that on this all-important drive of theirs. Now, it was time for the extra point. And for this man right here, kicker Pete Stoyanovich, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, extra points were a breeze. Call him the Jackson 5 because it was as easy as 1, 2, 3. Miami had the 6th best offense in football from a points scored standpoint in 1991. So Stoyanovich had to kick a lot of extra points compared to his peers. Even despite that, he never missed. On the season, Stoyanovich had attempted 24 extra points, and he made all 24 of them, including earlier in the game on a second quarter touchdown. During the 1990 season the previous year, Stoyanovich attempted 43 extra points if we include the playoffs. And sure enough, Stoyanovich hit all 43 of them. In fact, the last time he missed an extra point, and the only time he missed one for that matter, you've got to go all the way back to week 3 of the 1989 season, when the Dolphins played the Jets and lost 40-33, and Stoyanovich missed an extra point in the second quarter after a Pharrell Edmonds touchdown. Since that play, including the playoffs, Pete Stoyanovich had attempted 98 extra points, and he hit on all 98 of them. There was no chance in the world that he was going to miss this extra point, right? The Dolphins were going to be up by 7, it was going to be smooth sailing, and Stoyanovich was going to be just shy of 100 straight makes from the spot. And with that, the all-important extra point.
But that's, Jimmy, it's something that you just can't teach. And arguably he has the fastest release, and I think that's another reason why he very rarely gets sacked. That's very observant of you.
Extra point is good.
Yep, you'd be right. Stoyanovich made the extra point. There was no controversy. This video was entirely clickbait. And thank you guys for tuning in. JG9 signing off. I'll see you guys for the next video.
Miami leads it 17-2. Hold it.
Wait, what was that voice? You heard that, right? Charlie Jones, the play-by-play man for this game, was saying, hold it, hold it. And you heard the PA announcers say that there was a flag on the play. And as it turned out, that extra point didn't count, because there was a flag on the play in the area of holding. Stoyanovich would have to redo the kick, only this time, instead of taking it from the 2-yard line, it'd be from the 12-yard line. Still makeable, but obviously not as automatic. But it was still just as important to make it a 7-point game. Alright, take 2. Let's see this kick.
Hold it. Hold it.
Right zone is for a new.
We didn't design the new Mazda MX-3.
That's not a kick. That's a Mazda commercial. Unless this man right here, Pete Stoyanovich, is a transformer and he turned himself into a car, I'm fairly confident that we should not be at a commercial break right now. I'm seeing commercial breaks get squeezed into everything, but without a timeout for an injury or by a coach. I don't think I've ever seen a commercial break from one extra point attempt to a second extra point attempt on a penalty. And the reason for that is, yeah, they cut to commercial break too early, not realizing that there was a flag on the play. But the play continued, and sure enough, when we got back from commercial break, we saw the actual extra point, which was not live and was taken while we were gone, but was sure as heck not automatic.
We're away. Tony Page was caught for holding there in the circle on the wing, and so they had to move it back 10 yards, and here's the result of the extra point by Stoyanovich. Extra points are no longer automatic. Those of you that have followed the National Football League, and Stoyanovich, an 82% field goal kicker.
Yep, while we were away, someone forgot to do their job. Whether it was NBC going to break too early, or the guy in the red jacket on the field not doing his job and alerting the referees and players that the game went to commercial break. Either way, no one saw the extra point live. No one saw the kick by this man right here live. Unless you were one of the 47,731 fans inside Jack Murphy Stadium on this December day, you did not see this play live. NBC completely missed the play, which, I don't know about you, seems like a pretty big deal. Seems like a big deal to be watching a game and miss a play entirely, and for that play to literally change the score of the game, so you think it's one thing when, in actuality, it's another. It wasn't the first time that NBC missed a special teams play at Jack Murphy Stadium involving the Chargers against an AFC East team. You can learn more about what happened on opening day of the 1983 season and that bizarre debacle by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And somehow, that 1983 incident wasn't the last time, because it happened again here. Because among the people who got this game on TV, you were under the assumption that it was 17-10, only to realize 2 minutes later, if you had the audio on, that it was 16-10. And maybe, as awful as this was, and as inexcusable as this was, the issue wouldn't be a huge deal necessarily, or at least not as big of a deal, if it happened today where you have a score bug on the screen at all times. If you don't see the missed extra point, sure, you're wondering why NBC did that and who screwed up. But at the very least, you know the score is 16-10, seeing as the score says 16-10 at the bottom of the screen. But remember, this was 1991. No network had a permanent score bug. That wouldn't become a thing until Fox got the TV rights to the NFL in 1994. And if any network was going to have a score bug in 1991, it sure as heck wouldn't be NBC, who was super late to the party and wouldn't have a permanent score bug on their screen for sports until the 2000s. Well after everyone else, in fear that if the score bug was permanent and the game was a blowout, people would flip the TV and go to a different channel, thereby costing the Peacock valuable ratings in the process. Even at Super Bowl 32 during the 1997 season, in January of 1998, when every other network showing NFL games had a permanent score bug, NBC did not. What that means is, let's say you're watching this game without any audio on. Maybe you're with friends or you're at a bar or something along those lines. You see the extra point by Pete Stoyanovich, this man right here, get made. You then run to the bathroom and take a quick pee break, which makes sense. You come back to the TV. Until NBC shows the score again on screen, which is periodically and completely random, mind you, you're now watching the rest of the game under the assumption that the Dolphins are up 17-10, when in actuality, it's 16-10. You're watching the game under a completely false pretense. There was a considerable chunk of the viewing audience that had no idea that the extra point was missed and thought that the Dolphins had one more point than they actually did, only to find out later that they did not. And it's completely understandable as to why that's the case. To say that NBC dropped the ball here would be putting it extremely lightly. Now, if this game was a blowout, then we're also less inclined to remember it all these years later and bring it up. It would still be bad, seeing as NBC had a job to do, and they completely failed by forgetting to broadcast all the plays. But if this was a missed extra point, and it was the difference between a 48-14 game and a 49-14 game, unless you're a degenerate gambler, big deal. However, when all was said and done, the San Diego Chargers won this one by a final score of 38-30. As despite the Chargers trailing 23-10 after 3 quarters, as you can tell from these highlights, they exploded for 28 in the fourth to win it by 2 scores. That missed extra point? Yeah, that was a pretty big deal. At 38-30 in today's NFL, the Dolphins are down by just 1 score, and they're still alive if they can march down the field to get a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. At 38-30 in the NFL in 1991, when the 2-point conversion didn't exist, you need a hop, a skip, a jump, and a prayer to be able to win and make up a 2-score deficit that late with 90 seconds left in the contest. So that missed extra point had absolutely massive ramifications, and NBC just outright missed it. Just like kicker Pete Stoyanovich, plain and simple, they missed it. As for what happened after the game between these two teams behind me right here, the Chargers ended the year with a 4-12 record, so their season was dead in the water. We knew that going in, and they really were not that good in 1991. But for the Dolphins, that missed extra point and that fourth quarter collapse were absolutely huge, as after losing 38-30 to the Chargers in Week 16, they had to play the New York Jets in a winner-take-all Week 17 battle, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And in that game, the Dolphins lost in overtime in one of the most thrilling and intense regular season matchups ever considering the circumstances. The Jets would make the playoffs at an 8-8 record, and the Miami Dolphins would miss the playoffs at 8-8 off the head-to-head tiebreaker. The Dolphins just had to win one of their final two games, both against teams entering that matchup below 500, mind you, and they'd be in the playoffs. But instead, they completely choked down the stretch. At least with that Week 17 overtime game, Dolphin fans were able to watch the entire thing. Can't say the same about Week 16, though. Can't say the same about that Charger game. So as a lesson to any TV executives watching this video for whatever crazy reason, first off, if you're watching, I've got a lot of gripes about broadcasts right now, and you should shoot me an email so we can talk. But secondly, if you're going to broadcast an NFL game, then make sure you actually, show all the plays of the game. Make sure that you don't miss a pass or a run or an extra point, and that we get to see everything that happens on the field. Kind of a big deal. If I didn't see my team score or not score on a particular play, especially if the playoffs are on the line and it's a one-score game at a time, you bet I'm going to be ticked off. If I don't know the score of the game that I'm watching, you better believe that I'm going to be ticked off. And a lot of people clearly were on this day in 1991. Because Pete Stoyanovic's record on extra points is very similar to NBC's record with showing the scheme. You can do your job 99% of the time, but you better believe that we're going to remember the 1% of the time that you don't. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.